Hello everyone, welcome to the next webinar in 12D's training webinar series. My name is Lisa Stewart and I'm the Marketing and Communications Coordinator here at 12D Solutions. 12D's training webinars showcase common industry challenges, taking a close look at industry best practices and how these can be implemented using 12D products. The aim of these webinars is to upskill 12D users and broaden their understanding of the capabilities of 12D products. We run these webinars regularly and record them for posting through our website and on YouTube. The previous webinars from this training series, as well as the webinars from our Industry Solutions series, are all available on our YouTube channels if you missed those. During this presentation, you'll be able to type your questions along the way, as shown on the screen, and we'll answer as many as possible throughout the webinar. At the end, I'll read out some of your questions to the presenter. Today's webinar will be presented by Dylan Ravel, a Regional Sales Manager for 12D NZ with nearly 20 years of experience in civil engineering practice, land development, drainage and construction. Following on from June's Multipage Plots Overview webinar, which introduced the structure and functionality of MPS plotting in 12D Model 14, the MPS Frames and Node Referencing webinar will cover in greater detail the types and purposes of MPS nodes and subnodes. We will be covering the different MPS frame types that can be used to produce complete page compositions for plotting, including plans, cross-sections, long sections, perspective, 3D PDF, and water node frame types. Referencing of MPS subnodes will also be demonstrated, enabling users to reduce or eliminate manual duplication of plotted compositions, including title blocks, frames, models, and text. We'll also cover how to utilize CSV drawing registers to populate title block information and custom page numbering, and the process for linking to MPS pages is also included in this webinar. A section on MPS special chapters, enabling the power of existing 12D model plot parameter file plotting operations managed within the MPS, will complete this exciting session. Over to you, Dylan.
Thank you, Lisa, and welcome to the MPS Frames and Node Referencing webinar. This is a follow-up to the MPS Overview webinar that was held previously, and we're going to go into a lot more detail on the topics that were covered in that previous webinar. So today's content, we're going to be doing, as I said, MPS Frames and Node Referencing, and that's going to include the following items. Loading a 12D model MPS, review the MPS structure, MPS page arrangement, creating multiple MPS frame types, create special chapters, referencing nodes, and using drawing registers. Okay, the first thing we're going to have a look at is the frame types. There's multiple frame types within the MPS file. The first is plan, X-section frames, long section frames, perspective frames, section frames, 3D PDF, and node diagram frames. Having a look at the plan frames first, these are used to arrange and plot model details in a plan format. The scale and the orientation of the plotted data is set by the frame. You can have multiple frames on a page, and you can also have frames that can overlap or even overwrite sit on top of other frames, so inset frames. Model data can be mapped per frame using a map file, and model details can be viewed via a view or a favorite file. Subnodes can be referenced to the frame, i.e. text or symbols, and frame parameters can be used inside the title blocks themselves. Okay, X-section frames. This plots a cross-section that nominated changes from a section's model. Section plotting is live from the current model data. It's great for typical cross-section production. Multiple cross-section frames can be arranged on a page or used in combination with other frame types, i.e. you can have a cross-section and a long section, or a plan and a cross-section arranged on an MPS page. Now the parameters for the plot are derived from an existing XPlot PPF file. So all the settings within the XPlot PPF file, all except for the title parameters. The title block parameters are derived from a title block subnode within the MPS, so they're ignored from whatever's set in the PPF file. Long section frames are very similar. This prints a long section of selected strings within user-defined chainages. Section plotting is live from the current model data. Again, you can use this frame in combination with other frames on an MPS page. And the plotted parameters are derived this time from a long plot PPF file, again all except the title parameters. Perspective frames. This plots perspective view data from a current view or a view favorite file. The eye position and orientation of the plotted data is derived from the view data. Plotting is live from the current model data. It plots current or saved view settings. And multiple perspective frames can be arranged on an MPS page or in combination with other frame types. Next up is section frames. This plots 12D model data from a section view or a section view favorite file. The section plotting is live from the current model data. It plots current or saved view settings, i.e. what was toggled on and the settings for those toggles. Multiple section frames can be arranged on a page or used in combination with other frame types. And lastly, node diagram frames. These plot water node diagram within a defined frame on the page. Water node plotting is live from the current water model. The plotted parameters are derived from an existing water node PPF file, again all except the title parameters. And multiple nodes can be arranged on a page or used in combination with other frame types, example, plan and section pages. The last two items we're going to discuss in the PowerPoint part of the presentation of the webinar are subnode referencing and drawing registers. First off, subnode referencing. MPS subnodes can be referenced or shared from book and chapter levels. These subnodes can be text subnodes or symbol subnodes or title block subnodes. Referencing must be done from a higher MPS level, i.e. you can reference from a book to a chapter, from a chapter to a page level, or you can even reference from a book to a page level. And referencing is all about eliminating unnecessary duplication of data. I mean, why would you enter or place the same thing over and over for each page of a plot? Drawing registers. Drawing registers are used to populate the title block data. They can be either CSV or Excel spreadsheets. We do, however, recommend using CSV files as it removes the hassles of the difference between 32 and 64-bit Office applications and also allows CSV files to be created outside the Office framework. It's an efficient way to control the details and revision control of multiple pages in a drawing set. And even if it's just 2 pages, you can use a drawing register to control those revisions and all of the data within the title block information. Right, so we're going to head off to a demonstration of all of these things that have been discussed so far within the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, I'm just going to jump across to a 12D model project. We have some data in particular views, and we're going to start with the MPS file and work through the frames and all the frame types. I'm going to create a brand new multi-page plot sheet. And I'm going to start from one that's loaded with the later versions of 12D Model 14 from the lib. It's called MPS V14A3, and I'm going to read all of the details in through there. So just reviewing some of the structure, in the MPS file we have the book, and underneath that book you can have multiple chapters, and the book and the chapter have particular settings when it comes to setups and previews. On the book level we have a plotter mode and a plotter file, and on the chapter, in this one, we have a different plotter mode and a specific PDF file that it'll create if you plot out the chapter. Now, if any of the items are blank, they can be inheriting the data from the higher level. So in this case, the size and the background color in the preview, which is grey and in italic, they are inheriting the values from the book level. And underneath the chapter, we currently have one page, and this page can have multiple frames and subnodes to create the composition of the actual plot itself. So underneath this page, we have one active plan frame. This is called Plan Frame 1. We've got some settings in here with regards to scales and plots, and we have one inactive plan frame which we'll go through in a moment. So Plan Frame 1, it's currently set in the default settings to load data from the view survey. I'm just actually going to click on Pick View, pick something else, and that will transfer the view and the world coordinate to the view engineering plot. At any time, if we want to edit that frame, we can go to that frame on the tree structure. We can click on the Edit button, which will activate that frame in edit mode, and you can move it around, change the scale, and anything that you like. If I want to change the position of that view data inside the frame itself, I can come over to the Pan button, and I can manually click and hold and drag the data itself. But there is also the option of the Translate button here, which allows you to translate that view inside a 12D model view and select the position of the data that's going to be plotted out directly from the Translate button. So we have one frame and we have one plan view data within that. We currently have a frame number 2 here that is inactive, and this frame number 2 has its own view settings, as its own view scale, the data that's going to be plotting, but it also has whiteout selected as yes. So because of this level of this frame number 2 inside the tree structure, this is going to take precedence over the frame that's underneath it. So if we've got a whiteout and we've got a whiteout color or view color, it's going to obscure any of the data that is underneath that plan frame number 1. So I'm just going to activate this plan frame 2. And I'm going to pick a particular position where I want that data to be displayed. And I'm going to change the scale to 500. And you can see that's displayed that view data within a whiteout frame, and it's obscured everything on top. You have the option when it comes to frames to apply a mapping file. So on this particular frame, if I'd like to change the way that data based on a string name or colors, how they look within that second frame, I can do that and manipulate those by use of a map file. This could be really handy, like if you want the underlying survey data strings or objects to be grayed out or dashed. So I'm going to use a map file on this particular plan view 2, and the map file I'm going to use is one called all grey. And this is pretty simple here. If I open up that map file, just in the basic tab, what I'm doing is mapping essentially all of the objects within that view or within that frame to be a grey colour. But you can also use the map file to add, remove or change the particular way that objects within that frame look. In this case, on the top of the curve, I'm mapping that to cyan. I'm giving it a larger weight, and I'm using it to also turn off essentially the lip of curve and the invert of curve by applying a colour of no colour, so they're actually not going to be displayed or even plotted within that particular frame. And so you'll see it's taken all of those line work inside there, it's changed them to grey, but the one that has been kept is the top of the curve, and that's been coloured cyan and a lot thicker. So map files are a very handy way of using the same data, but to see them displayed differently. And before we move on to the different frame types, we'll just do a little bit of a review of the subnodes. So these frames themselves, they have subnodes that are attached which are relative to the frame, so they're shown underneath that particular frame subnode in the tree item. We have text, and we have a symbol subnode that's attached to frame number 1, and we have a text node that's attached to frame number 2, and that's relative to the bottom center of the frame, and the data that's coming through is a mixture of typed in text and variables that will automatically populate values. So in this case we've got the dollars frame, which is populating the actual frame name, and the dollar scale, which is populating the scale for that particular frame. When it comes to subnodes, you can have those named something that's actually meaningful, so anybody that's picking up the MPS file can navigate around that easier. I might call this frame title. If I hit set on that, you'll see that that will change the name of that inside the actual MPS file. And when it comes plan frame 2, which is automatically being populated in this text subnode here, if I change the name of the frame, I'll call this detail inset. And as soon as I hit enter, that will go and populate that automatic node text. Right, moving on, we will start looking at some different frame types. I'm going to go up to the main chapter level here, and I'm going to insert a new page number 2. Well, I do actually want to take some of the details, in this case the title block from page number 1. So for any subnode, I can simply go and copy that data, and then go down to page number 2, and I'm going to paste that subnode information into page number 2. Just to change some of the data, I'm going to come in and say frame types, give it a drawing number 1000, sheet number 2, give it a revision A, and as soon as I hit set, then you'll see that will preview and populate up the title block that I've just put through there. So let's look at some of the frame types that we can actually place within this composition of the page. I'm going to come up to the frames button, and I'm going to choose a perspective type frame. I'm going to place this where I want that on the page itself, and the perspective type frame is just going to be coming and plotting at plot time the actual data and the models and the orientation that's set, in this case to the view that I'm going to select, which is view 3D. So that's going to be to view 3D. And I'm going to try and do as little plotting as I possibly can, because it takes about 15 to 20 seconds to generate the plots. And you guys don't want to be waiting all afternoon during the webinar to see these plotting out over and over again. So the next frame type I'm going to do is a cross-section frame. And this cross-section frame is going to take up this, or occupy this space within the page itself. And it runs from a PPF. To start off with, I'm just going to start using the PPFs that are loaded with 12D version 14, in this case the Public Works A3 Basic. Horizontal scale is going to be 100 and the vertical exaggeration is going to be 1. If anything's left blank, it'll take whatever's set within the PPF file. The model of cross-sections is going to be the cross-sections channel, and I'd like to have a label type of boxes, and I'm going to plot out a particular chainage. You can plot out multiple ones within a chainage range to fit into the frame, but I'm just going to choose chainage 160. And as soon as I hit set, 12D is going to go away, read that PPF file, and it's going to generate the result for that cross-section plot for chainage 160. Just something to note with the PPF, in particular cross-section PPF file, that's arranged that to the very bottom left-hand side of the frame that I've placed. This comes from the default settings within the PPF file. It's under the plot parameters, where you can choose the vertical or the horizontal direction of the plotting of the cross-sections, either from top to bottom or bottom to top, or from left to right. And at any time I can come in and I can change the shift values if I do that manually, maybe shift that in by 20 millimeters and shift it up by 10 millimeters and hit set. It's going to go and regenerate that cross-section plot at chainage 160 and update the actual position within the frame. But I can do that manually as well, simply by selecting the pan button. If I click on the pan button, I can manually change the position of that on the plot page composition, and you'll see it automatically change the shift X and the shift Y as soon as I release the left mouse button. So you can see you can very quickly get the start of typical cross sections, which can be quite detailed. You can either have your boxes type plot or your centerline type plot, but I'm going to go one step further here. By utilizing some of the additional options that's available within the cross-section plot PPF file, we can actually make that a much more detailed cross-section. I'm going to choose a pre-prepared one I've got here called DR channel. And if I open that PPF file, based on paired cuts or paired points, you can get that to automatically label different things. In this case, it's going to label the distance between the paired points or points on the cross-section. And also when it comes to cuts, I've got some cut models set up that is going to automatically put symbols on that cross-section based on the symbol settings within the PPF file. If I set that again, that's going to come up with a much more detailed and almost complete cross-section, or a typical cross-section type generation. Okay, the next frame type that I'm going to put on this plan composition is a long section type frame. I'm going to choose where on the page, or select where on the page this is going to be generated. And I'm going to start by using a standard Lplot PPF file that's loaded with 12D, the PW A3 Basic. And I'm going to choose a super alignment, in this case to plot. The horizontal scale is going to be 1000 and the vertical exaggeration is going to be 2. And I'll hit the set button and 12D will go away and generate live that long section from that string itself. Now you notice I didn't put a start chainage and end chainage in there, and because we have pagination set within this PPF file, it's actually plotted all of the available sections, which in this case is 2 within that frame. So I'm going to limit the start change and the end change to what I actually want shown within the frame, 0 and 300, and I'll put a shift of about 25 millimeters on this and hit the set button. And you'll see that's placed the long section production inside that frame where I want it on the page composition. When it comes to actually producing the plot for this, if I go up to page number 2, you'll see that we have a plotter type predefined. There is no PDF file name that's actually specified for the plotting of this page, so it's just going to inherit whatever the page name is. I'm going to come up and give this page name a better type or a better name. And so with no specific PDF file name. The PDF file that's produced when I plot this page is going to be whatever the page name is. In this case, it's going to be frame type. So I'm going to go ahead and produce this plot. Now it's going to take about 20 seconds, so it might be a good time for you guys to review what we've done so far. Okay, that's finished that plot, and you can see the finished composition of the PDF file that's been created from all of those frame types and all of those settings, including the perspective plot type frame. We're now going to do one of my favorite types of frame types within the MPS, which is a 3D PDF frame. I'm going to insert a new page for this. And I'm going to insert or go copy and paste that title block information. So copy that into the new page. And I'm going to insert a 3D PDF frame type. So this will actually create an interactive 3D PDF. So the people who are opening this PDF file using one of the simple Adobe readers can actually navigate through, measure, and do clever things with this PDF. Just a tip for those people who've used 3D PDFs before, it comes up as basically a rectangle within the PDF file with a note saying click to activate. If you'd like to have or give people a little bit of a snapshot of the information of what's going to be there, then I'll show you a nice little trick to have something there and waiting. For this 3D PDF file, I'm actually going to generate the models and the data that's shown within that 3D view. I'm also going to insert a perspective, and I'm going to put it over the same place as that frame with the same data. So when we open the PDF file, it will actually have a perspective frame showing what's contained within the 3D PDF, essentially a little snapshot, and then the 3D PDF will activate and overtake that. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit plot, and we'll see what happens when this finishes and opens up. Okay, that's now completed, and you'll see that's opened up that PDF. We've got the perspective plot on top, and as soon as I click to activate the data in the frame underneath that, which is the 3D PDF data, Adobe Reader will open that up, and then we have a dynamic ability to navigate around the 3D data that's been produced from that PDF file. And one of the nice things is you can also go and activate or turn on and off the models that were inside 12D model in the layers inside the PDF file. So if I turn off the super tin of the design, you can see my water strings and my tri-mesh information that was produced underneath that. Okay, we're going to take a little pause on the frame types for now, and we're going to start having a look at referencing and how that works. So as I explained in the PowerPoint part of the presentation, you can reference any subnode type, and you can reference them from a book, a chapter, or a page level, but it can only be referenced down to something from a higher level. So something that's on a book level can be referenced down to a chapter or a page, or something that's referenced on a chapter level can be brought down to a page level. I'm going to put two reference types or two subnodes on a book level. First of those, I'm going to do a title block. I'm going to create a title block reference on the book level, and I'm going to purposely use a different title block from the type that I've got currently installed. So from the lib, I'm going to choose the PWA3 title block. I'm not going to worry about any user text values because we've been through that before. I'm going to hit set. Now you can see that that title block is on a book level, and that's going to automatically show up or reference down to chapters and pages. on a lower level. So if I refresh this page, we'll see straight away that we've now got two types of title blocks on all of those pages because it's drawing the second one down from the book level. Back up to the book level, I'm going to do a model reference. Now I'm just going to very quickly bring in from my 12DA library some notes, maybe some standard design notes. I'm going to put those in a model called notes and go import. And I may want those notes to be brought down on multiple different pages or multiple different chapters, so I'm going to insert the model type node on a book level. That's going to be the notes model. And I'm going to pan that across and put it in the default position where it's going to appear on all of my A3 sheets. So just to review, I have a title block and a model type subnode that are attached at a book level, and we're going to go ahead and reference those down and show you how you can manipulate and modify those on the lower levels. So on my chapters where I now have two title blocks, I actually don't want this book level title block to be active at all for any of the pages underneath the chapter. So I'm actually going to reference this title block 1 down to chapter 1 and then deactivate it. So while I'm on chapter 1, I'm going to go up to the title block and I'm going to reference a title block. By selecting the blue upside down triangle, it will show me all of the title block types that have been referenced at a higher level. In this case, it's just called title block 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to deactivate that title block 1 from any of the page levels. So if I go up to page number 1, and I'll just do a refresh on that, you'll see I'm back to only having one particular title block on all of the pages within this chapter because I've referenced that title block on a chapter level and I've deactivated it for any pages that are underneath that chapter. So you can use any reference subnode and you can deactivate it, but you can also modify it. So for instance, on page number 1, where I've got the model subnode reference from a higher level, I do want that to appear on the page, but I'd like it to appear on a different part of the page. So what I can do on a page level is if I go into the model icon and I reference that model from a higher level, in this case it's book model 1, okay, that's referenced that book model down to the page level. I could deactivate it if I want to turn it off, but in this case I'm actually going to modify it. I'm going to pan that data to another part on the plan, and I can modify the position or even the look or the content of the reference subnode from a higher level. It's still going to take whatever is set and whatever is modified in that model, but it's going to place it into different places on the page. So for the different page, in this case my 3D PDF file under page number 2, I actually do not want that notes model to appear. So I'm going to reference on page number 2 that model data from the book level model 1, and I'm going to deactivate it so it will appear on every other page underneath that chapter apart from this one here where I've deactivated that model data. And just to give you an idea of being able to modify the content from a subnode, on the chapter level, this draft stamp watermark, which is on a book level, I'm actually going to reference that down to the entire chapter. So text reference from the book level watermark. So on a chapter level, I actually can go and edit the content and the look and the feel of that text type subnode, so it'll be different just for the chapter as opposed to the rest of the book. So if I go into the book watermark, I could change the text, or actually in this case I'll just change the look and feel of it. I'll go text 7.5, and if I go set, you'll see that that has actually modified that. It's still referencing the watermark, but I've changed the look of the text itself. And if I really wanted to, I could go and change the content of that text subnode so it appears differently where it's been re-referenced down, and even the position of it too. I could put that wherever I like. Okay, so far we've seen title blocks that have been referenced, we've seen text that's been referenced, and we've seen models that's been referenced. And what we're going to do next is reference a frame. And this is probably one of the most common ones that you're actually going to use. I'm going to go back up to a book level, and I'm going to insert an entire new chapter. And on this chapter, for starters, I do want to reference the notes model, and I'm going to deactivate that. So that's not going to appear on any of the pages underneath this chapter. But on a chapter level, I'm actually going to insert a plan frame. And this plan frame can be used on multiple pages within the chapter. So if you have the same composition on all of the pages in a chapter, then you can actually insert the frame on a book or a chapter level and have that reference down to the separate pages, so it's controlled in one place. And in this case it's asking me, do I want to create reference frames for pages? So any pages that I create, do you automatically want to reference that frame into the pages so I don't have to do that manually? And I'm going to go yes. So on a chapter level, this frame is this size with these settings. It's going to have this data that's going to be populated within the frame. And I can edit that on a chapter level. But when it comes to particular pages, in chapter 2, if I insert a new page, you'll see it's instantaneously referenced that frame. And in this frame for page number 3, I'm going to drag it down so I'm seeing more of the data from the north. And then I'm going to insert a further page. It's automatically put the chapter frame there, and I'm going to pan this so we're seeing more of the data from the south. So the data that's displayed and plotted is controlled on a chapter level onto plan frame number 1, and you can see that that's got its settings there. Under page 3 and page 4 it has the same frame. So if I come back to the overall reference frame under the chapter level and modify that, and let's say I change it to half a page, because that's referenced through, when I go up to page number 3 and refresh that view, it's going to change to match the chapter level frame. So you can have one frame or multiple frames displaying data that are individually modified by way of position and or content or settings, but they are controlled from an overall chapter level. And just to finish off the actual frame types, I'll just take a step back from referencing at the moment. In chapter 2 I'm going to add a new page. It's going to be page number 5. Now the first thing that I want to do is I want to have a totally different composition on this particular page. So I'm going to deactivate that chapter level frame reference. And I'm going to have a blank slate and to put my own frames. So the last frame types that we're going to show you is the node diagram, and these are great for detailed information about a water node or water nodes. I'm going to place a node diagram frame. Step number 1 is going to be half the page. It's going to be getting its parameters and its plot settings from a PPF file, in this case one that's loaded with 12D, the PWA3 water node PPF file. The scale to start off with is a 50, and I only want to do, in this case, one particular node. So I'm going to do node M2. But I could do 3 or 4 or 5 by doing the node masks for inclusion, or I could do the whole lot by leaving that blank. The size type, I'm going to go from diagram, and I'm going to just hit the set button, which will go and generate that node diagram from that water model. And in this case, this is our node M3. And you'll see it's got a different type of frame type, a node diagram frame 1. And I can modify that, change it, or even just click on the pan button and change that position on the page if I want to. Move it down a little bit more. Okay, just a little bit too far up there. So that's node M3. if I want to have another node on that diagram, I'm literally just going to copy that frame type, paste it in, so I'll have a second node diagram. I'm going to edit that second node diagram frame, move it over. Okay, so this is node diagram 2, and in this case I'm actually going to pull up node M3 generation for that second frame. If I go set, and you can see how easy it is with the node diagram type frames to create a composition, and you can enhance that obviously with text that's relative to the frame, or free placed absolute text to pretty much fill in all of those detailed for your water nodes or your water pits. And finally, before we go on to special chapters, which is going to be done inside a totally different MPS file, I'm going to come up and save all of these changes to the project. So I'm going to change the multi-page file plot name to frame types. And I'm going to write all those settings away. And there is a double check, so if you accidentally click on the X button on a particular MPS editor, it will prompt you whether you want to save the multi-page plot settings. If I go yes, I'm going to replace the previous one. And then we're all ready to go and have a look at special chapters and drawing registers. The next item we're going to look at is special chapters in combination with drawing registers. So I'm going to start a brand new MPS file. And I'm going to read in the standard library file loaded with 12D version 14 from the lib, the MPS v14 CSV A3. So I'm going to read that file in. And you'll see we've got a small number of subnodes on this MPS file. We've got the book, we've got a title block that's attached at a book level, and a chapter with 2 pages. Now we'll have a look at the drawing registers in the title block. In the Drawing Register tab of the Title Block subnode, we have Enable Drawing Register selected, and this register type is CSV with the matching register file. I'm just going to reselect that register file from the lib, from the standard install of 12D model version 14, and hit Set. On this cell here, the subnodes, the name and the value, this is probably the most important thing with the CSV file, and links back which pages are linked to which item in the CSV file. So I'm just going to open that CSV file and we can have a look at what's inside. So we have in column number 1 of the CSV file, row number 1, which is the lookup header rows. We have the name plot file, which matches the header row in column A, and that is put to the drawing register variable $plot file. So what the $plot file is going to do, this is where it's going to match the key and the header, and it's going to go and put in the appropriate contents within the title block file from the appropriate page name. So you see we've got page 1 and page 2, and we have page 1 and page 2 as subpages under chapter 1. If I look at the user title info, this is where it tells it which particular item in this drawing register is going to be populated where on the title block. So for the main title, we've got the drawing register variable, and it's going to go and look up on row number 1 the title header, and the subtitle 1 and the subtitle 2 header. And they will be populated as appropriate in the title block file, or matching the user title info. So I'm just going to go and hit Set. I'm going to go to page number 1, and you'll see it's populated the items on the title block from the user title info directly from the drawing register. Drawing registers are especially helpful when it comes to special chapters, where you're going to be producing multiple pages from one special chapter subnode. So I'm going to go up to the special chapter icon, and we're going to do a long section special chapter. I'm going to start using a PPF file loaded with 12D, the PWA3 basic, and I'm going to select an alignment or a string that I want to create the long section from. I'm going to override the default PPF file settings with a couple of definitive parameters here. and I'm going to go set. And it's easy as that to set up a long section special chapter. I'm going to click on the plot button and we'll see the resulting plot that is produced. And there you go, that's produced 2 pages of long sections from the special chapter. And we're going to go and have a look at a couple of other settings. Up in the special chapter subnode, you notice here there is an item called Add Chapter Pages, Page Numbers to Plot File. This is unchecked at the moment, and we have no title block information that's coming through from the drawing register. If you want to have total control of the sheet numbering when it comes to multiple sheets, you can use these chapter page numbers in the plot file. So I'm going to activate the drawing register once more, and you'll see in the lookup for the plot file we have the special chapter 1, which matches the special chapter 1 subnode name, but I also have additional numbers here, 1 and 2. And 1 and 2, so for the 2 sheets of the long section file, they're going to be populated with this text, but more importantly they're going to be populated with sheet numbers 200 and 201. So that needs to be checked if you're going to use the user-defined page numbers. Now that produced 2 pages of single long sections. If I wanted to do that with in combination with a plan, I could quite happily go and open and create a plan frame placed on top of this sheet or this page and arrange that to basically match what's going to be produced in the long section and orientate it around and use all the tools we've seen so far in the webinar. Or I could use the automatic plan production that's within the PPF file as standard in 12D. So I'm just going to delete that frame. I'm going to choose, under the multi-long plot, a different PPF file. This long section I've added and amended, so it's got the plan plotting option ticked inside the PPF file. So that's active, and I've got my margin set, and I've got the view that I'd like to get the details for the plan plot from. This is where the symbol setup only for plan plotting comes in on the special chapter for long sections. So I'm going to activate that. And I'd like my north symbol to be red and a scale of about 5. And I'd like that with the plan plotting to be produced over the top of my page. So I'm going to put a 30mm inset and a 260mm inset and hit set. So I'm going to reproduce this plot with a different PPF file that's got the plan plotting activated. So I'm going to go ahead and hit plot. And you'll see that that's produced the long section as before, 2 sheets. It's automatically orientated the plan plot from the specified view on top of the sheet based on the margins within the PPF file. And the north point up here has been automatically orientated for that plan projection from the PPF file with the correct north direction. So that's a special chapter using long sections. In my previous webinar, I was asked about being able to orientate the frames along an alignment. In 12D, we have a plotting type called plot frames, and these can be run within the MPS file as well. Now, I've got a plot frame here that's been inserted and has the correct sheet size and the correct parameters. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to plot frames, more, and I'm going to choose plot frames along a string. I can choose the alignment string that I want to automatically arrange these plot frames. The seed plot frame, which has got the size and the scale. I'm going to put an overlap distance of 10, and I'm going to create another model called frames alignment. And go process. And what that has done is it's created a model of plot frames which are automatically aligned and arranged along the alignment, and we can use the MPS file to actually go and plot those out and be controlled from the MPS. To do this, we're going to actually insert a new special chapter type, plot frame, and I'm going to choose the model plot frames, which is the frames alignment which I've just created. I'm going to plot the details that are currently stored in the view engineering plot, and I'm going to go set. And also, for the title block, if I want to automatically insert a north point orientation within those plot frames, I'm actually going to insert a title block reference and reference the Book 1 title block. And under the symbol parameters, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put in my north symbol. The scale mode is going to be user scale. I'm going to have a scale of about 10. I want to automatically rotate the north points with the plot. I'll give it a red color, and I'm going to put it, say, 350 and 250 millimeters up. So it's going to be somewhere up near the top right hand side of the sheet. So if I hit set, you'll see that north point appear in those positions with the parameters that I've done. I'll bump that up to 15 and maybe make that 375 and 260 and hit set. And I'm ready to go and produce those multi-page plots. And the special chapter 2, I'm going to make sure that I add the chapter page numbers to the plot file, so it will automatically get the sheets numbers 300, 301 and 302 from the drawing register, which has been referenced previously. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and plot those plot frames. Right, that's completed, and you see I have 5 sheets which match the 5 plot frames. I have my north symbol automatically orientated to the sheet or the plot frame position, and I have my drawing numbers or my sheet numbers starting at 300. So if I scroll down through those sheets, okay, you'll see that north point automatically orientate for the orientation of the plot frames, and they've just been very quickly placed along an alignment. Okay. The other multi-page plot sheet special chapter types, the cross-section, the water node diagram, and the water long section, are very, very similar. And what we're going to do is we're going to go and do one final special chapter type, which is the water long section. I'm going to choose a PPF file from the lib, the PWA3. I'm going to choose the model of my water network. And I'm going to specify a horizontal scale of 1000 and a vertical exaggeration of 5 and hit set. Now this will adopt obviously from the title block on the book level anything that's attached to the drawing register with regards to the special chapter 3, which I don't actually have at the moment, but you'll get the idea. If I go set and plot that water long section type special chapter, and you'll see that that's produced 11 pages of water long section plots automatically from one MPS special chapter. Okay, last thing I'm going to do is obviously save away all those changes that I've made, and I'm going to call this special chapters. Write those MPS settings away, and you could obviously go and enhance those by changing the chapter names, making them a lot more relevant. But for now, I think that's given you a very good detailed overview of the different frame types and the special chapters within an MPS. So I'll hand back to Lisa. Thank you, Lisa, for questions.
Thanks, Dylan. Yes, we've had a few questions through that I might share with you. I'll just make sure that we're in business. There we are. There's that screen. Yep. All good. So I'll just sort of read out a couple of these. I'm not sure whether they'll be easy enough to demonstrate live, or it's something that might need to be sort of taken into a chat later on, or by email. Sure. But we'll see how we go. How can we use a company's title block in other formats? So I'm not sure whether that's something that can be demonstrated live, or if that might be more of an email one.
Yeah, I'm not too sure what they mean by formats. Obviously, with the MPS file, that creates the PDF files.
Sure.
And all of the title blocks within the MPS are referenced from a 12D model file type called a TBF or title block file. that's defined and controlled and written within 12D. So I think we are planning to have another webinar about creating TBF files and editing those. So more than happy to answer that in an email if they can clarify by way of what formats that they want. If not, I can always point them on to that next webinar that's going to be done.
Sure, okay. That sounds good. And how do we create an alignment sheet with multiple pages showing plan and long section?
With multiple pages showing plan and long section, pretty much like I did on that long section special chapter,
Sure.
where you can activate the plan plotting, and that in my my example did 2 sheets with 2 plans. But if that long section, if you're plotting a model of strings instead of just 1 string, and if that happened to do 10, 15, 20 plots of different alignments, then you can use that plan plotting to automatically orientate those and produce those.
Sure. Can you change the orientation of plan in plan view?
For the long section plot, no, the orientation is automatically arranged to, when you're using the plan plotting within the PPF file, the orientation is automatic to best line up with, I guess, left to right along the screen for the long section. But if you want more total control over that, you could do like I suggested and actually insert your own plan frame on that page and orientate that and have total control rather than have the PPF orientate that automatically for you.
Okay. Can leaders be created on cross sections similar to the way in which dimensions can be created?
Not leaders as such. If you're doing leaders with regards to like a typical cross section, then you could have those leaders in another model that is, I guess, placed over the top. When it comes to producing those typical cross sections, I know some people do plot that to a model to start off with and then arrange all of the additional information they want on the cross sections in that model, and then they can either use that in a plan frame or I guess add that data to the information on a cross section. So not within the MPS itself, you can't insert those leaders.
Great. Okay, if the special chapters have extra pages on the next run, do all the page numbers fix themselves?
If they are referenced to a drawing register, and you had, like I suggested, 1, 2, 3, 4 as a postfix inside the Excel spreadsheet, then yeah, you could have in your spreadsheet, more lines than in the pages that it's going to create. And then if it adds 1 or 2 or 3 pages and you've got those available lines with the postfix on them, then yes, it will just control the page numbering. But you just need to make sure that you've got enough lines in the drawing register that match the amount of pages that are going to be produced from the special chapter.
Sure, okay. And we had a request to show the placing of multiple frames on a string again. Is it possible to jump back in there?
Oh, the plot frames, yeah, absolutely. And on that, I've been having a little bit of a think. There was one thing that I made a little mistake of, but I'll rectify that and I'll go through that. So what we have here is we have a plot frame, and those plot frames are placed under 12D using plot frames create, and you can specify the TBF file that it's referenced from. And say A3, you can specify the the base color, you can specify the base scale, so maybe you do a different scale, 750, and I'm going to place that here on the screen, and I'm going to put it in a model called frame A32. And then if I turn on that new model frame A32, you'll see that that's that base plot frame placed with those settings. And then to automatically arrange those along alignment was under plot frames more, plot frames along a string. And so I can choose the alignment string that I want to arrange those on. I can choose the seed plot frame that contains all the data. This is a slightly bigger scale, so maybe I'll give it an overlap distance of 20, and I'll call this frames alignment 2. Go process. And then if I turn on that frames alignment 2, you'll see it's arranged those 1 to 750 frames over the top. And of course, you can absolutely, once it's done its initial arrangement, you can absolutely come in and edit those plot frames at any time, pick on it, and then rearrange it, translate it, rotate it. Close that one there. Pick that one. And place it exactly where you want it to be. That placing along an alignment is just purely for your first up arrangement. So hopefully that answers that one. Now, before, I don't know if there's other questions. The one that I did actually make a bit of a baby one was in the map file. So if I go back to that frame types MPS file, I should have plotted it. I was just trying to save time. But under chapter 1, page number 1, where we had the inset frame, and I used the map file on the second frame number 2, I just should have used a slightly different color inside the map file. So I didn't actually notice while I was doing it on the fly, but that hasn't removed the rest of those strings because I used the wrong color. Rather than the color, no color, I should have actually used the color view color, which essentially turns those off. So if I write that, place it, finish it, and just re-preview that, you'll see those little black lines, they'll actually disappear around that cyan line. So that was my bad. Sorry, I was thinking about that later on as I was doing it, as I was going through. So yeah, they need to be view color instead of no color to mask out or turn off those strings. So was there any other questions, Lisa?
Yes, we've just got a couple more I'll read out.
Sure.
It looks like a follow-up to the question about page numbers on special chapters. So if I'm not using a spreadsheet for page numbers, will all the page numbers automatically fix themselves still? No, they will be a user title info. So in our special chapter file where we were using the special chapters, and in the TBF file here under book level, because we were using the user title info, you would have to essentially go and change that variable type, and you could automatically number the pages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but if you wanted to number them 666 to 670, then absolutely use a drawing register, because you're going to have more total control over that, which is why I showed that one on a particular special chapter. Sure, okay. And I'll just take one more live and then I'll email you through the others.
Sure.
So when I copy and paste a page, it resets a lot of options, so it kind of whites stuff out. And is there a way to fix that?
When he copies a page?
Yes, it's resetting options back to no. Oh, so resetting the options back to no.
Okay, we'd definitely like to see that. So please, by all means, feel free to email me and send me an example, because it should be taking exactly the settings that are set on those that page or that sub node that you've copied and pasted. So that doesn't sound like it's working quite right, and we'd like to know about that. Thank you. Absolutely.
Okay, I'll send out that send you this spreadsheet of questions at the end, and we can get all of those answered, the rest of those. But thank you very much for your presentation today, Dylan.
No problems.
We'll pop the recording of today's webinar onto the webinars page of our website in the next few days, and we'll email out the link to that video to everyone who registered, so it's nice and easy to access. And if you need to contact us in the meantime, our details are on the screen now. That concludes our presentation for today. Thank you all for attending, and we hope to see you at future webinars.